Israel-Gaza Iran War News Live Update. Russia, Iran, Israel, China worst, EU tops US, UK. View the research, Global Leadership 2024, 585 kilobytes PDF. According to a new global survey to mark the 2024 Fulbright Distinguished Lecture by Washington Post columnist and CNN host Dr. Fareed Zakaria on June 14, Russia, Iran, Israel, and China rank worst out of 14 key nations and institutions for global influence, with perceptions of the four countries becoming increasingly negative over the last 5 years. In a poll by Ipsos and the Policy Institute at King's College London of 23,800 people from 31 countries, 48% say Russia mostly uses its influence for bad on the world stage, followed by 37%, 32%, and 30% for Iran, Israel, and China. After surveying 23 countries on this issue in 2019, the report contrasts 2024 sentiments. Public opinion across nations polled in both research shows a 22 percentage point gain in the share who think Russia has a mostly negative influence, as well as increases in shares who think China, Israel, and Iran do. Perceptions of Britain and the US haven't changed much. In the latest 31-country survey, 26% of the global public feel Britain generally uses its influence for good, compared to 11% who disagree. However, opinions on whether the US has a generally beneficial, 21%, or mostly bad, 19%, effect are more evenly split. 3 in 5, 57%, of the global population would like their country to replicate the political and economic model of the European Union, higher than Britain, 50%, the US, 47%, or China, 34%. The US model divides global opinion, with 53% saying their country should not pursue it and 47% saying it should. However, across 24 nations with trends, the fraction of the public that would follow the US model has increased by 7 percentage points since 2019. As in many other countries, the number of Britons who think their nation should mimic the US has climbed from 24% to 35% in the last 5 years. But this is still well behind the 59% who want Britain to emulate the EU. Despite increasing assessments of the US model over the last 5 years, Poland is the only European nation where a majority, 52%, wants to follow it, with the Netherlands, 20%, and Sweden, 20%, least interested. In his Fulbright address, Towards a Post-American International Order, Dr. Zakaria will argue that almost 80 years after World War II, the international liberal order is under threat worldwide as its major supporter, the US, pulls inward. Geopolitics is changing rapidly, and he will investigate what's next. Many countries now view America's global influence more favorably, but not America. Most countries with tendencies view America's global influence more favorably than 5 years ago. In Sweden, plus 12 points, France, plus 9 points, Germany, plus 11 points, Spain, plus 8 points, and Britain, plus 6 points, and others, more people think America mainly uses its influence for good. Since 2019, the percentage of Americans who feel the U.S. generally utilizes its power for good around the world has dropped from 48% to 34%. Some nations have embraced America's political and economic model in the past 5 years. People in Japan, plus 29 points, Turkey, plus 25 points, Mexico, plus 19 points, Canada, plus 12 points, Spain, plus 12 points, Britain, plus 11 points, and Peru, plus 11 points, have become more likely to agree the U.S. is a political and economic model they would like to emulate since 2019. Britain is less seen as a force for good in the world by Britons, but Americans and Canadians perceive it worse. From 40% to 32%, Britons who felt their country primarily used its influence for good on the world stage decreased 8 percentage points between 2019 and 2024. Over the same era, Americans' views of Britain decreased by 13 points and Canadians by 10 points. No European majority wants to follow Britain's political and economic paradigm. Poland, 49%, and Italy, 48%, are most likely to follow Britain's political and economic example, while Sweden, 29%, the Netherlands, 30%, and Germany, 30%, are least likely. Canada's effect is most favorable, while the UN and Germany are close behind. Canada has the highest global impact rating of the 14 key countries and institutions surveyed, with 31% saying the country mostly uses its influence for good and 8% for bad, comparable to the UN, 29% good versus 13% bad, and Germany, 28% mostly good versus 10% mostly bad. Country perspectives of global influence vary greatly. The newest study found significant differences in attitudes of the least influential countries among 31 nations. Russia's effect is most positive among Indonesians, 37%, and Malaysians, 21%. In Sweden, 74%, and the Netherlands, 71%, most respondents feel Russia's effect is bad. Turkey, 50%, and Ireland, 49%, are most inclined to say Israel uses its influence for evil around the world, whereas Israel, 72%, says the same of Iran. South Korea, 62%, is most likely to say China exploits its influence for evil, while Indonesia, 10%, and South Africa, 13%, are least likely. Dr. Zakaria said. This survey's results are intriguing. People worldwide still want liberalism in many respects. It shocked me that the EU is the global model of effective governance. The irony is that while most countries view the US more favorably than they did 5 years ago, America does not. Liberal inheritors are most self-conscious about their place in the world. According to Ipsos UK Chief Knowledge Officer Simon Atkinson, it's clear from this poll that Russia has lost favor worldwide. Over the past 5 years, Britain and the US have maintained their international reputations despite their populations losing confidence in their government's good deeds. Professor Bobby Duffy, King's College London Policy Institute Director, said, "The survey helps us understand contemporary opinions of countries and economic and political structures around the world and illustrates how different they are growing. Indonesia, South Africa, Malaysia, and Thailand have 10 to 15% who think China uses its influence for evil, whereas South Korea has 62% and Israel, Japan, and Sweden nearly half. An increasingly multipolar world with very varied perspectives of how nations are acting and whether we should replicate their patterns will strain international relations. Individuals in free democracies must recognize the growing diversity of these ideas worldwide." US-UK Fulbright Commission Executive Director Maria Balinska said, "It's important to understand how global opinions toward transatlantic alliance countries are changing amid rising geopolitical tensions. This Ipsos King's Policy Institute survey opens crucial but difficult talks about liberal democracy's future. At the US-UK Fulbright Commission, we welcome such discussions and Fareed Zakaria's perspectives on this vital issue." The 2024 Fulbright Legacy Lecture.